paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted. And, well, first off, of course, I got to show you the shirt for race's sake. You're not alone. Got some flying saucers on it, good stuff like that, which I got as a gift from the head of Onyx Network, Margie. You can pick one up too. I believe they're available on the merchandise site. But I got to tell you about what we got going today. Imagine a building that is so old. You're dealing with ghosts from American Indians, Native Americans, Revolutionary War, all the way up through to today. I mean, the place has been, according to the folks who help run it, this place has been actively occupied in some form or fashion for over 250 years. So it's been on the site of American Indian land. It has been there for so many years. It's had its part played in the business of the early American time with murders involved, possible murders. There's also a big part of the Revolutionary War was played out there, the political parts. There's just so much going on at this place, and they're trying to save it, which is why I wanted this guest on here, because if we don't save our history, there'll be nothing to be proud of for the next generations. And I'm big on that. You know, I did a lot to help save the Harney Mansion, General Harney's mansion in Sullivan, Missouri. We tried a lot to help with the John Bush Brewery, which is still operating. And there were other places. The Tri-County Truck Stop, I think that's a lost cause, but we sure tried because I just love the history. So let me introduce you to Kyle Mangus, and he is a vice president with Friends of the White Hill Mansion, which is in New Jersey, and he's going to tell us more about the history. Kyle.
Hello.
Hey, just a little bit of history you was able to give me before the show is incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
This goes back how far?
At least till 1722.
Okay.
The building that's there now, but prior to any European settlers, we've had 3 archaeological digs on site, and they found over 20,000 artifacts. And through that, they determined that was Native American land, specifically the Lenape Indians, and they used it as a winter encampment, according to the archaeologists. So there's always been someone habitating this area. So it's really just a kind of a special place.
And the history you was describing, I mean, that starts out, businessmen, of course, local heroes. You said the town was named after these folks?
Yeah, so the original settlers after the Native Americans were the Fields family, which is Fieldsboro, New Jersey, where the mansion's located, is named after the Fields family. There was 3 generations of Robert. They were all named Robert 1, 2, and 3. Most of the story revolves around Robert number 2. He was very politically and socially connected in the local area. Mm-hmm. His family, like I said, owned the property since 1722. There was another building on the property back then, but we don't know. That would be the original house. We don't know where it is on the property. Kind of lost to history.
Not even a foundation you can find.
No, not yet. Well, we're hoping through, in the years coming up to do more archaeological digs and possibly, locate it. But the town was basically built around it. The Fields at their height, they had over 600 acres. So basically the whole town of Fieldsboro, was their land. So, but Robert II built the current house that's still standing there, roughly around 1750, 1760. And the way he built it was a way to show how much money and power he had. He had multiple businesses. He was involved in politics. He was in the shipping industry. He had a commercial wharf right down at the bottom of the hill where White Hill stands on.
Mhm.
The Delaware River is right behind the house, so we're kind of in between Philadelphia and Trenton. And back in that time period, it was a hotbed of shipping activity and
Yeah.
people moving around. So it was a really strategic location. Um, it got its name White Hill. That was the town was originally named because when you came up the river, where the mansion sits now was the highest point in the area, and it had cherry and apple trees that were growing on top of it. So that's why it was called the White Hill. Um, like I said, the Fields family were there. Robert was involved in what was called the correspondence committee. So it was a way that the colonies could kind of keep in communication and organize themselves against British oppression of.
Mhm.
Uh, so he was involved in that among many other things. And in January of 1775, he went to what was allegedly either a secret meeting for this correspondence committee or a business meeting down in Philadelphia. So the story that we were told is he went um, on one of his personal boats right behind the house on his personal wharf, went down to Philadelphia, and he never returned. He had a
Okay.
servant or a slave with them, and when he got back, they were like, "Hey, where's Mr. Fields?" And he had like 4 or 5 different stories. No one really knew the true answer. 5 days later, they did find his body on the Pennsylvania side, and how the story goes is he had a gash in his head and water in his lungs. Um, that kind of in the climate of the area at the time, it was very political. Um, the American Revolution didn't start yet, but it was kind of leading up. So they kind of brushed it under the rug as kind of an accidental drowning. They weren't sure.
Okay.
But there was some rumors that it could have been possibly politically motivated or business related, but we just don't know. But it did leave his wife Mary pregnant with her seventh child, basically to run all of his businesses, and basically the American Revolution broke out on her front doorstep. So it's just an incredible story just in there. And then that's where Mary kind of comes in, and she takes over the story of White Hill. Uh,
Okay.
she was um, she was very smart in her time period. She was visited multiple times by the British, by the Americans, and then later on the Hessians who were fighting on the behalf of the British. I mean, right where it was, like I said, it was a strategic location in New Jersey. There was people
Mhm.
all over. The British came to the house multiple times because they got reports that she was either harboring patriots or harboring rebels. She was a woman of means, was able to get them to leave. She basically said, like, I don't want anything to do with your war. I'm just trying to live my life and, keep my family together here.
Mhm.
Um, Before Washington crossed the Delaware to attack Trenton, 2 weeks before that, she got a knock on her door at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was the Hessians. They basically wanted to quarter there for 2 weeks. She tried to tell them to leave, but they were like, well, we're here now. We don't know who's going to come after us. So maybe you should take us in. So she did let them in. They stayed there for 2 weeks. She kind of lucked out because she got probably one of the better Hessian commanders in the area. He brought all of his own food, all of
Hmm.
his own supplies, never took anything from Mary. Um,
That's
he
rare. Yeah.
actually, yeah, he actually helped save one of her daughters who was sick because he had a doctor with him. And we have letters that Mary wrote to her sister and said that this guy, Captain Rendon, was her favorite little Dutchman because he was just so nice. So she lucked out with that. But in that time period, you got to remember how much was going on. That people didn't know were the Americans going to win.
Yeah.
Were the British, like, no one knew nothing. They were just trying to survive. And she had a very strategic location because she was right on the water, with a wharf. So she
Mhm.
was truly uh, we call her the matriarch of the mansion, and we accredit probably why it's still there. Is a big part because the way she was able to navigate different things.
Okay.
She got protection orders from the British, from the Hessians, and then later on the Americans because she did remarry. She remarried a gentleman called Thomas Reed. He was a famous Navy captain in the newly formed Continental Navy. His brother was George Reed, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence from
Wow.
Delaware. So, yeah, just so many cool stories just from the Revolutionary War time period. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's truly incredible.
How long did the Fields family remain in that mansion?
So the Fields family remained there for about 80 to 90 years. There was another Robert III, Mary's
Mhm.
son, who she was pregnant with when his father died. He took over the mansion. Um, And at that time, we're not sure what happened. There were some rumors that he was mismanaged, but basically his family eventually lost the mansion after he passed.
Okay.
The 600 acres was kind of sold off slowly over time. But in the 1800s, after his death, there was multiple families there. They lived all there probably about 10 years, 10, 15 years or so. There was a couple notable families that lived there, a lot of inventors. There was a famous typesetter who lived there, invented a typesetting machine that revolutionized the typesetting industry. There was a guy who owned a pottery business down in Trenton, who, again, in his industry, he invented a whole bunch of tools and techniques and patents, and apparently had a workshop somewhere in the mansion that kind of revolutionized that industry. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's always had someone living there. And then later on in the 20s, in 1922, a German immigrant bought it, turned it into a German restaurant, put a speakeasy in the basement during Prohibition. His family ran it from 1922 all the way to 1972. So a super successful run. And then it ran as a restaurant open to the public all the way until 1992, and when it eventually shut down. So
tell me a little bit about the speakeasy. That's intriguing.
Yeah. So again, in that time period, the Great Depression, Prohibition, we don't have a lot of like documented history, but we got a lot of family stories and a lot of reports from the local area. So in 1922, when Mr. Glink, that's the guy who bought it, turned it into Glink's Mansion House, was what the name of the restaurant was. First order of business was he went in the basement, dug it out 3 feet by hand, and put in a traditional speakeasy. All of it is still there today. It's pretty much all the original woodworking. And everyone kind of knew about it. It was one of them things that we kind of think everyone knew about it, and they didn't really bother him so much because he was out of the way. People could go to get drinks. There's a lot of mob ties, allegedly. A lot of stories of mobsters coming, bringing their mistresses, hanging out. But again, we don't have any hard evidence, just hearsay. But the really interesting part is there used to be 2 tunnels that ran from the basement down to the Delaware River behind the house, and they dated back to colonial times. Well, they were there until at least the 60s, until they started to collapse, and then they were filled in and bricked up. But the rumor is that during Prohibition, they would store illegal alcohol of some kind in these tunnels, and at nighttime, they would deliver it up and down the local river towns over to cover of darkness. Now, it's interesting because we have a couple historical documents that on the Delaware River, the state police did find rum runners, but never any association with Whitehill. But there was enough that it was like, there could be more to this story. So
yeah,
that's just the coolest part of that time period, is it's so much stuff we don't know.
Was there a lot of bribing of police officers back then? Was he just the guy who had the most contacts in law enforcement?
So it's a mystery. We don't know. Some of us speculate that that's how he got enough money to acquire the mansion, his contacts and whatnot. But yet again, his family lived in the mansion, and they ran it for 50 years. So it's all hearsay because we can't prove it. But I speculate that's probably what happened. It was kind of like it was tough times back then during Prohibition, and even so it was a way of making a living too. I don't think it was that uncommon, especially up in this area. But
yeah, or anywhere else.
Yeah, true.
As long as there wasn't a lot of murders involved, law enforcement kind of kept back away from it.
Yep.
Okay, so after Prohibition, and this guy ran a restaurant until the 70s, just a regular fine dining German restaurant.
It was a fine dining German style restaurant. Yep.
Okay.
And from all the reports and all the newspaper clippings, it was a really fancy place. Everyone came there. We have a lot of senators, a lot of socialites used to come to it because during Prohibition, you could get alcohol, and it was kind of where it sits now. It's way off the road, has a really long driveway, so it was out of sight, out of mind too. We think that's why it was a nice, quiet, private place with a nice ambiance setting. So,
okay. Who got it after that family in the 70s?
So after the Glink family, I guess I don't know how I guess they sold it off. It always ran as a restaurant after that. So from 1972 all the way to 1992, and there was different families who took it over right after the Glink family. Was a group of local business guys from Bordentown, New Jersey, which is the next town over. They kind of all banded together, bought it. They ran it for about 10 years. And then there was another family, and then the last family that owned it, they owned it until 1992, until they got bought out by the next door neighbor. And yeah, it's always been a place where people have come and visited.
Okay. So 90s on, it was still being used. Did the neighbor move in there, or what happened
So
to the house?
the house was bought by the property next door, and there was rumors that they were going to turn it into some kind of offices. So they put a gate around the house, and it sat vacant till about 1999, when the local municipality, Fieldsboro, they acquired it through I don't know if it was eminent domain or something. They got it back from them, and the whole
Okay.
idea was we're going to get this and kind of preserve it. So
Thank God.
they acquired the mansion. And then in the early 2000s, that's when the organization, the Friends of Whitehill Mansion, started, which is a 100% volunteer-based nonprofit organization that's, dedicated to preserving the history and just saving the place and keeping it open because of the amazing amount of history and whatnot. So,
It sounds like the town should be very proud of this place. It's played a major role throughout the history of the U.S.
yeah, and there's so much that we know, but there's so much we don't know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's rumors that maybe George Washington was at the house. We can't prove it, but I mean, that's an amazing piece of history on its own. I mean,
Well, he was in the area, of course.
he was, it's just we don't have that documentation that George slept here, So
Okay. The Hessians and when Washington crossed the river, was that the Christmas raid where they killed a bunch of them in their
yes,
sleep?
yep, that was the big Washington across the Delaware, and it's kind of interesting because we're located in Burlington County, and right before Washington crossed the Delaware, um, a little bit down further from us south, there was kind of a smaller battle in Mount Holly, which drew the troops at Whitehill down there away from Trenton. So we were
Okay.
kind of directly, but not directly involved in kind of helping out George Washington because the troops at Whitehill were like, there's something going on down here. We got to go. And then here comes George across. So it's really
Okay.
kind of a cool thing. So we're still looking into that. Who knows? Maybe Mary had a little hand in it. Keep them here for a little bit,
Yeah.
entertain them. We never know. So,
Well, it sounds like you all are very proud of the history of that place.
yes.
And it's an incredible history. I started out saying it was 250 years old or more, but you're telling me now it's over 300 years old, just the building.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy.
What's the building size like?
So we're roughly 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. It's tough because you got the main body of the house that's colonial, right? But every family that came through did their own renovations, right?
Of course.
So there was a family that came in the 1800s that blew out the back of the house, blew out the front of the house, and turned it into more of a grand Victorian mansion, right? And then the Fields did some additions, and every little family has put their own little stamp on it. So it's so hard from a historical preservation point to go, okay, where do we start? Because you look here and the outside of the house is like, okay, well, this is a Georgian style, colonial house. And then you look over there, it's like, well, that's 18th century. Oh yeah, well, that's 1950s. And it's like, where do you start? So it's a very complicated house.
Right.
But it's a big house. We got a basement, first floor, second floor, and an attic.
Okay. So how many bedrooms would you say was there? 6 or 8 probably?
Probably. They've been broken up over the years, obviously because of the restaurant, but probably about 6 originally.
Well, I would assume the Hessian generals then stayed, and any other general stayed in the house with the mistress of the house.
Yeah, so it's the history of Whitehill is so complicated. So we do know that the main guy, Captain Rendon, he stayed in the house with some of his troops. But at the bottom of the hill, the next street over, was the Fields commercial wharf right on the Delaware River. And they also had another building down there that they used as a tavern. So we know some of the Hessians were also down there because they were kind of all over because the Fields had multiple properties. And one of the tunnels allegedly ran from the basement of the Whitehill house down to the tavern. So it's just it's just so much history that is just so amazing to me.
And all that history leads to the hauntings, and that's how I learned about you is some of the ghost hunters talking about what an amazing place that is, and you're now letting ghost hunters come in.
Yeah, we've been doing it for a couple years.
Okay.
We have some public investigations run by paranormal teams, and then we're also open up for private investigations for teams who wants to come and investigate it. And I'll tell you what, without the backing of the paranormal community with the historical community, there's no way we would be able to continue this project. I mean, most of our funding comes from the paranormal side of it, and it's super successful and it's super helpful in
So you're
historical preservation.
you're not getting federal grants or historical grants for
We
money for
are.
this. Okay.
We're doing some matching grants, but
Okay.
most of our funding right now comes from the paranormal element. We do also have history programs, but the bread and the butter is the
Yeah.
paranormal. So
Yeah, a friend of mine running a museum in Jefferson City said when his bosses asked him why he wants to waste his time with this paranormal stuff, and he said, "I can get more people in that door with a ghost story than I can a history lesson."
yeah, and I
That's,
mean, I just see it when I first started at White Hill. I'm from the local area, have a lot of history, go back to the 1700s, my family in this
oh
area.
wow,
So I was like, this is just a cool story. I love history. I started out as a lover of history and I
Mhm.
saw this place. I was like, I want to go help. And I knew it was haunted, but that wasn't really on my radar. I was like, I want to help save this history. Cool, it's
Sure,
haunted. Whatever. And that's how I got involved in it. And I started doing tours and I started having my own experiences. And then that's what led me into the paranormal. And I've seen it time and time again where we have people that aren't so interested in the history, like, oh, cool old building, but it's haunted. And as soon as we get them in there, start telling them about the history, start
yeah,
doing a little tour, they're like, oh my God, this history is amazing. I would have never known about this if I didn't
Mhm.
come in because I heard it was haunting.
Yeah,
So if I can get people in for the paranormal and tell them the history or vice versa, it works for me. It's a win-win.
absolutely. And that's again, you're saving the building with it,
Hmm.
and I know that's going on in a lot of places. In fact,
Hmm.
many places said it was the paranormal that kept them from closing during COVID.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely helped us out. I mean,
Mhm.
we're limited because, I mean, our building is a little bit, we need a lot of renovations just because
Yeah.
it sat vacant for a while. So we can't have like huge amounts of public in all the time. So our
Mhm.
history program is tough because we can do tours and stuff, but we're limited to what we can do. So the paranormal supplements that, and it just helps. It goes right back to the house. So I don't. Some of these historical locations, I mean, tell them to reach out to people like me and be like, it's just a win-win.
Yeah, and there's so many of the boards
Hmm.
directors who are so against that. They're older folks. Ghosts don't exist. Don't bother me with this nonsense. But the
Yeah.
as you said, the paranormal has saved a lot of these places.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a believer in ghosts or the paranormal. Just let people in, have fun. They do their thing, and
Yeah.
it helps it out. It spreads the history. It spreads the exposure. It brings money in. It's just a win-win.
Now, the lady from the Scott County Museum was
Hmm.
telling me, and you've probably met her too. She talks about this topic a
Hmm.
lot, this particular topic. She was going on about how when, because of COVID rules, you could only have 10 people in this building. Well, ghost hunters don't want crowds. We want to
Exactly.
have small groups. And man, if the place is as haunted as you say this one is, we would all want to be in there with a small team with recorders and
Exactly.
let what happen.
Yeah.
So, oh, that's great. So you said you had some experiences that convinced you.
Yeah. So like I said, I started there and like I always watched the paranormal shows and stuff, but I never really I didn't take it serious. It just never was on my radar. Like I said,
Okay.
a lover of history. I started there, just started helping out whenever I can, started doing the tours, got on the board, and just through the years I was there, I would have little things here and there. And I'm still to this day as an investigator skeptical, right?
Okay.
So there would be times when I'd be given a tour and, you hear footsteps, you hear sounds, you're in there alone, just doing normal stuff. And you would hear things. And I'm always like, it's an old house. I don't know, like
Of
whatever.
course.
But about a year and a half in, I was there during the day, just doing a normal history tour. It was a nice day, so I opened some of the windows to get some airflow. The tour left. I went back in the house, went up to the second floor, um, and there's a couple small rooms up there, and I had one of the windows open in the small room. So I went in the small room, opened the window, shut the window, came out in the hallway, and in the hallway there was a 2 to 3 year old little boy just staring right at me. And I looked right back at him. We locked eyes, and then he just poof disappeared.
Was it your typical white ghostly looking thing? Was it real looking child?
No, he was 100% real. He wasn't see through. It was,
Okay.
and we just locked eyes, and I looked at his face, and to this day, like that's burned in my mind. He was just staring at me, and you don't even. For so many times, people ask me like, "Oh, how do you give tours in there? What happens if you see something?" And I'm like, you never know until it happens. And we just stared. He disappeared, and I just was like, "Huh, that's weird."
Yeah.
And it didn't process until like I locked up. I walked out into the parking lot, and I was like, "Oh, that like there wasn't like that didn't make sense." And then it started going, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm a real believer now." Like once you have an experience like that, like. It's a personal thing. Like you can't, me, I can't explain that. There's
you can't,
no way
and they cannot convince you it didn't happen.
No. So like other things that I've experienced, I'm like, okay, that was weird, but that was one of a couple things that I was just like, I cannot, and like seeing a full body apparition, probably as you know, is rare.
Yes, absolutely.
And what was so weird is whoever this kid was, we locked eyes. Like he was looking right at me. He was fully aware I was there. Like we looked at each other, and it was just poof. So that was a really, I guess life-changing moment.
Could you take a guess on what time period by the clothes he was wearing?
So I'm kind of mad at myself because when I was just so shocked that I just
eyes were locked. Yeah.
I was just looking at his face and his eyes, and everyone asked me that, and I'm like, oh. So I don't know. I can't place it. But I do know that Mary Fields had 7 children. Only 3 lived to adulthood.
Okay.
So we don't have a lot of records, but we have someone researching Mary Fields' story right now. And she did find a lot of kind of receipts in her time period of medical supplies and wrappings. Now, Mary also was a Quaker, and what we're told by the experts is Quakers used to just wrap the bodies in fabric, and they would mark them in unmarked graves. So
really,
the children, we have limited records. They dropped off the records between the ages of 2 and 10. There was a boy in there that died between the ages of 2 and 4. So could it be him? Possibly. I don't know. We've had a few other people that have seen him. And he has a particular physical feature that I don't put it out in the world because I wanted to see if people actually see it. And a couple people have reported, and it's something so particular. So it's really cool when that happens. But I mean, allegedly, it could be one of the Fields children. I don't know. But again, almost 300 years of history there, right?
Yeah.
There was probably so many people there, and some probably don't have any records for.
The original owners, the Robert II, was a slave owner. Was there a slave cemetery there? Was there?
So again, we don't know. We do know that Robert, from some tax records, the Fields did own slaves. We don't know how many. It's funny because Robert also was the local tax collector or tax guy, so we kind of think he fudged a lot of his own records. So. But we do know there was enslaved people on the property at some point, but we just don't have a lot of history on it, and that's one of the many things that we're trying to research to tell the story of everyone at White Hill, from the Native Americans, the enslaved, everyone. So because it all fits together in this snapshot of American history that White Hill Mansion is.
The history is incredible, and now you're getting into the good part where history and what you all are seeing are linking up in some way. So we're going to talk more about that, Kyle. If you'll hold on just a minute, I got to pay a bill or two, and then we'll be right back with you. Would you hold on? All right. This is the kind of stuff I love. The mansion in Sullivan, General Harney's mansion. The history behind that, it was owned by a dentist afterwards. He had stone quarried from the same place and built a big L shape after the general passed. The general's spirit was there. I dealt with him. And same thing with the Tri-County Truck Stop, which has been on a lot of the TV shows, is haunted, but I was one of the first to go ghost hunting there. And again, the history just matched. When we look through newspaper articles and look through all this stuff, it's incredible. And he's got the history for this place, which is neat. We're going to be right back with him in just a moment. But first, we're going to have to talk just a little bit about the show and the UNX Network. So hold on for just a second, and I will be right back.
While most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine, what happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Toutfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from UnX Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
You know, friends, every few weeks, we're coming up with a new series of commercials with all the shows, and suddenly within a few weeks we have to change it again because we got more shows. The UnX network is the fastest growing network for paranormal going right at the moment, and if you're not a member, well, you should be, because you're missing out a lot. There's the blog, there's a newsletter, there's a monthly magazine that is free and sent to your email address in digital format for you to read at your convenience. So we're going to talk more in a little bit about being members, but I want to get back to the history and the hauntings of the White Hill Mansion because I am intrigued with this place. So let's bring back Kyle Mangus, Vice President of Friends of the White Hill Mansion. So Kyle, we've got the ghost you saw.
Yes.
And other people have seen the same spirit, which you're not telling particulars of it.
Yeah.
So it'll match.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say they saw the same thing, it's the same ghost, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay. What else have you seen or other people seen that makes so many ghost hunting teams want to be there?
So, again, like everything with White Hill, it's so many pieces to it.
Sure.
So we have a couple hotspots in the house, but I mean, I'm no expert. I'm just a paranormal investigator and a location owner, so I don't know all the answers. But just from my experiences and the reports of hundreds of investigators,
Mm-hmm.
We kind of see similar things, and then we see new things all the time.
Okay.
So my theory and the theory of the volunteers at White Hill is we have a kind of like a core group of spirits, I think, that hang around, or ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
They just are there. I don't think they're stuck there. I think they're just
home.
like our resident ghosts, I guess you could say. And then we have other things that I don't know if they come through or they come in different areas. I don't know if it has something to do with the Delaware River behind us. I'm not sure, but there's times where people are investigating and they'll come and say, "Hey, we had this crazy experience," and it's something that we've never heard before, something totally different. So it's just so cool because there's so many different levels to our hauntings. Like you can sometimes think you're, encountering like, okay, are we interacting with a child or is this someone from, the 1970s? Like
Mhm.
what's going on here? But some of our more notable hauntings is, a lot of children's spirits. Like I said, we know that some of the Fields children most likely passed in the house, but
Okay.
300 years we know there was multiple families there. So we have a lot of children activity, especially on the second floor of the mansion. That seems to be where they're at a lot. Um, on the first floor, we get a lot of disembodied voices. The main parlor, when you first come in the house, was the main entertaining area.
Okay.
For the longest time, I never personally investigated. I don't know why. It was always a comfortable room. I was just never did it. And then one day we started investigating it. Crazy EVPs, a lot of tripwire and REM pod activity lately.
Mhm.
On the first floor too, there has been a woman in white seen. Um, and she's been reported by a couple people and a couple of our volunteers. Um,
Okay.
and when they see her, full body apparition of what they describe as a woman in her 20s or 30s, blonde hair that's up high in a bun, and she has a high, like kind of a Victorian neck collar with a
Okay.
white dress. Um, and whenever she's reported, she's given a look like, "What are you doing in my house?" kind of thing,
Yeah.
and then disappears. Never says anything. The one time she was just standing in the hallway, and somebody was in the house during the day, just taking some pictures. She looked up, and there's this what they described as Victorian lady standing there, giving her a look, and disappeared. Um, she's also been seen sometimes on the second floor, but the one cool report we had from a volunteer, and I think it's just so cool because of how it happened. The team was investigating in the basement. Um, and the investigator left the mansion to go use the restroom, came back in, and as soon as she walked through the front door, you can see the basement steps. There was someone standing there with their head like leaning down, looking down the steps. And she called out because she thought it was one of the investigators, and it was the lady in white. She popped her head out of the basement, looked right at her in the hallway, and then just disappeared. So that was really really cool because of the interaction. Like
Yeah.
that would have wigged me out because you're interacting with someone who's not there and then disappears.
And
Like
how did your volunteer respond to that?
she was shaken up for a little bit,
Okay.
um, but then she bounced back. She still comes around, so that's good. We didn't lose her.
Well, I go back to what you said about the child ghost because it's the same thing has happened to a lot of the investigators. What did I just see?
Exactly. It's like a it's a process.
Yeah.
Like everyone thinks it's like the scary movies. You see something, you
No.
freak out, you run. You don't even your brain doesn't register what's happening that quick,
Right.
and yeah, and then it hits in, and you're like, "Whoa!" Like I have no explanation for that. So that was kind of similar to what I had. She had.
And
Um,
with me, it's I'm not going to run out of this place and embarrass myself over nothing.
exactly,
I've got to see
exactly.
what it is.
And 9 times out of 10, if you're running in a haunted location, you're probably going to hurt yourself more than anything that you're running from.
Yeah, I don't know many ghosts. There are some that get violent, but overall,
Yeah.
they don't hurt
No.
people. You
No, and
hurt yourself trying to run away
exactly.
from it.
And like I always tell people, we get a lot of first time investigators come to White Hill, and I'm like, this is the perfect spot because we don't have there's nothing evil, there's nothing demonic,
Right.
none of that there. They're all human spirits, they're all people. Some are really nice, some are kind of grumpy, but we're not gonna be peeling you off the ceiling. This is a really awesome place. It was a family home. It was a place where people just lived and experienced their life.
And
So
they're happy there.
they're happy. I think for the most part. I mean, we have some grumpy spirits, but who doesn't, right?
Oh, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Now, where you're located, at least where I'm from,
Hmm.
of course, Missouri was the frontier for a long time. The
Yes.
Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. All disease started on the river. It
Hmm.
came up from New Orleans or it came from wherever.
Yep.
And diphtheria, yellow fever, measles, chickenpox, smallpox, all started on the river. And I
Yep.
wonder if that may have been what happened in your area too.
It's possible. I know down in Philadelphia, which is not very far from us,
Hmm.
um, during the 1700s, they had the big yellow fever
Yeah.
epidemic. A lot of the people that lived down in Philly, in Philadelphia, they came out to what would be the suburbs now. And
Mhm.
we know that the Fields did have a house somewhere in Philadelphia, and probably during that time period, they just came to White Hill to stay away from that. But yeah, yeah. And what's really cool about White Hill is there's so much traveling back and forth because we're in between Trenton, New York, Philly, that
Yeah.
there's been so many people that probably have come through that door. And I think that's another reason why we're so known for being haunted, or we're so
Mhm.
paranormally active, is because there's been so many people through the years just in and out of the house. It's always been a place. There's always been people. That energy, I think, kind of stays. So it's
I'm sure for many, especially youth, being able to go out to a restaurant, get all dressed up, eat something that wasn't cooked by mom,
Mhm.
was a big deal, and maybe they're reliving some of that.
Exactly. It could be.
Hmm.
So.
That's. It sounds like a really intriguing place. What other stories can you share with us for the ghost hunters?
So definitely down everyone's every ghost hunter's hotspot is the basement. It's always active.
Okay.
So there's basically two parts of the basement, right? So there's
Hmm.
the speakeasy side, and then what we call the older side of the basement. So the speakeasy is pretty much from what it was 1920s. Still has the bar. It's over 100 years old. All the paneling down there is from the 20s,
Okay.
and we get a lot of activity down there. I attribute it to it was a place where people came for years to have fun. It's a
Hmm.
party place. We do get a lot of some kind of mob related hauntings.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you bring up prohibition, um, bring up the police, sometimes you get responses. There's a table that sits in off to the side. It's a round table, and from what we were told, the family stories and whatnot, was that table used to take over a month to get a reservation for. So
Wow.
that's where we think a lot of the alleged mob activity. They used to come here, meet, and whatever. So a lot of times, if you go down there, you start playing cards, either
Hmm.
use a REM pod or something, they'll actually play back, play cards with you. It's strange. I've seen it a couple times, like blackjack. Can
Yeah.
can you do you want to hit? Light up for if you want to hit. Boom, and it's weird. And
Oh,
sometimes they win. Down there, we seem to have kind of two different kind of hauntings in the speakeasy.
okay.
So you have like a fun vibe, right? Like it's a party place. So you play German music, swing music, you'll get different kinds of activity, right? You get EVPs, movement, REM pod activity. And
Mhm.
then there's what we think is a male spirit down there. And when he comes out, the vibe changes a little bit. Like he's not evil, but he's just a presence. It gets
Okay.
darker. Um, he says a lot of bad words through REM or through EVPs, spirit box kind of stuff.
Okay.
Um, but he's super intelligent. He knows why people come there. He knows why what the project is. He knows who I am. He knows our president Dawn.
Okay.
So it's really kind of incredible. Like from my standpoint, um, as like a location owner and investigator, it's like a long term study of a haunting. And
Hmm.
I can see like at least like in the hot spots, I'm like, I think they slowly over time they're learning and interacting with us. Like this guy has said multiple times, like, I know Kyle, he reminds me of something. He's told
Okay.
investigators one time that he's like, the lights that you use are stupid, talking about K2 meters.
Okay.
So it's kind of cool when you hear that over the years through different people. It's not just your own experience. You're hearing,
Hmm.
okay, so it's not just me. I'm not crazy. These other people are experiencing the same thing. But it's the speakeasy is just one of those really active spots that, I mean, people get the most incredible Estes sessions down there.
Okay.
Super intelligent down there. It's just a cool place down there.
So, do you think that male spirit may have been a manager or an owner,
So we
someone
think
running the bar?
So we think maybe, again, this is all
Of
speculation. We don't
course.
know.
Of course.
Is he may have been involved somehow with the mob? I don't know. I don't want to say an enforcer, but kind of a big personality that was there,
Hmm.
and he's still there, and he just throws off that vibe, like a tough guy vibe.
Yeah. You have a good time, but if there's any trouble, I will take care of it.
Exactly. And when he pops in, he overtakes the environment. He's like, "I'm here now. What's up?" And then he'll just go when he wants. It's so strange.
So when a team comes there to investigate, you allow them to bring, like you said, swing music or German music or
Yeah,
gambling.
whatever. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we only have a certain amount of rules. No drugs
Okay.
or alcohol, no open flame because we're a 300
Oh,
year
God.
old mansion.
Yeah, I just
Um,
heard about Fort Chaffee in Arkansas. Some firefighters there investigating it for ghosts burned the place
oh
down.
my God. Yeah, that's the biggest fear of ours.
Yeah.
We don't really have any problems with it, but and no Ouija boards. But other than that, we just want people to come and
Hmm.
experience what we experience. Learn about the history of this place. If you have a life changing experience like me, it's awesome. But it's just a great time. We just want everyone to come and have a great time and experience the history and the hauntings.
And you got teams that assist you with this, or are you there, or
Yeah,
someone from the company?
yeah. So usually, like if it's a private investigation, it'll be either me or a small group of volunteers.
Okay.
So we'll open the house for you. If you want a history tour, we'll give you a history tour. If you want us to tell you some of the hot spots, we will. If you don't, we'll just let you go and just tell you the rules where you can and can't go and have
Hmm.
fun. We do also have public investigations where we have some event companies come and host events. We have some paranormal teams that come and help us out and host events for us as a
Okay.
fundraiser. So all that's on our website. We do history tours. Um, we try to do as many as we can, but again, we're volunteers, so it's whenever we can get the help. But
Sure.
all that's on our website too. So
So they go to whitehillmansion.org. They'll be able to find out cost, dates,
yes, yeah, you
and
can
submit a request.
exactly. Yeah, if you go to whitehillmansion.org, if you're interested in the paranormal and want to come either on a public or a private, go to the haunt section. It'll have a list of everyone who's hosting an event with dates and links, and it'll also have private investigations. So if you click on that, it goes right to a calendar on our website, and you can see what's
Okay.
available and book directly from there. So,
Over the years, I've noticed in a lot of these places like yours, they'll bring them in for history.
hmm
The penitentiary in Jefferson City, Missouri is one, or
yep,
wherever. But you never get through without going into ghost stories because somebody will ask. Are you having the same situation?
yeah. So we try to be fair
Separate the
for
two.
both sides, right? So we
Hmm.
try to keep the historical stuff kind of historical and the paranormal kind of separate. But it's so tough because it intermingles, even if you
It
don't want it
does.
to, because if you're somebody's there for the paranormal, they want to know the history, and if they're there for the history, they're like, well, yeah, but this does the paranormal line up with the history? So there's times where it's a strictly history tour, and like
Hmm.
I'll get to the second or third room, and I kind of read the room, and I'm like, hey, you guys want to hear some ghost stories? And they're like, yeah, that would be great. So they're kind of, everyone is interested in different levels, which is really great because we try to accommodate for everyone, right? So we have
Sure.
the private and public investigations for people who really want to go into the paranormal. We have the history tours for people who are like, I just want to hear the history. And then we do candlelight tours, which are a little bit mixed of both, right? So
Okay.
we bring people in, we tell them the history, but we also tell them some of our paranormal experiences. And a lot of times we'll get um, paranormal investigators who are available to come in, and they'll do like a little ghost hunt 101. In each room, they'll be like, hey,
Hmm.
if you guys haven't done this before, this is how we do EVPs. And they kind of get your hands into it. It's like a mini one.
Sure.
Just to get your feet wet. And that seems to be bridging the gap between the two and getting even more people interested in the paranormal and the hauntings. So,
Hmm. Well, like I said, getting them interested in the history is the
mhm,
first to getting volunteers and getting
exactly.
donations. And how much more do you need to roughly? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to word it to save that building for sure.
So, whew, so right now it's structurally sound.
Okay.
Um, it's probably going to take millions long-term goal.
Sure.
Right
Of course.
now, because the building sat vacant for so long, right now we're working on closing the exterior envelope, securing everything on the outside so nothing on the inside can get damaged. So right now we're not worried about anything on the inside. We just got a grant in 2023
Hmm.
to fix a Victorian window, Oriole window, and stabilize our front porch. So the
Okay.
next step is we're going to look into getting some grants to fix the um, we have colonial windows from the
Hmm.
1700s, so we're going to get them addressed. But pretty much anything anyone wants to donate would be much appreciated, and you can do that right from the website too. Um, it's it's a big project, but we're just
Yeah.
chipping away a little bit at a time. And it's
Well,
again like it's so complicated because it's not just a colonial house. It's a colonial house. It's a Victorian house, 1920s. It's so tricky.
1950s. Yeah, right.
It's so tricky. So
The stuff I've been somewhat involved in, the Harney Mansion in Missouri or other places.
mhm.
It's tough because once you get it called a historical landmark, everything's got to be exactly right. If it had tongue and groove, it's got to have tongue and groove.
Exactly.
We did manage to get a grant for the mansion to put a roof over the old roof because we couldn't fix the roof up the way they wanted it, but we
Mhm.
had to stop the rain from coming in.
Yeah.
But it takes forever. That was a 30-year project or something.
It is. It is tough. We're preserved through the state of New Jersey as a historic
Okay,
site. We
should be.
have our nomination in for probably over 8 years to become a national historic register, but it takes so long. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's not as easy as like I just call a contractor up and be like, "Hey, come fix these windows." It has to go through so many steps and so many
Mhm.
approvals, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love.
And the building is deteriorating while you're playing these political
Exactly.
games. So,
Exactly. So it's a double-edged sword because without the protections of the historical committees and whatnot, the building might not be there. Somebody could
exactly.
just come in and make it condos. But it also is tough to get things done because of the paperwork and whatnot. So it's always a balancing act.
So, how can folks come visit it, get more information, and maybe even help out?
Yeah. So all of our if you can visit our Facebook page, the Friends of White Hill Mansion, a lot of information on there. Our Instagram, White Hill Mansion,
Mhm.
and we're on TikTok now too, White Hill Mansion. Easy to find. All of our information is on our website. Our contact information is on our website. Scroll to the bottom, send an email. Comes right
Okay.
to me or our president, Dawn. Yeah, if you guys want to come for the paranormal, it's on the website. History, it's on the website. Um, we're also having 2 events this year. So coming up March 16th, we're having a history day. It's our third annual,
Okay.
I believe, where we're
Wow.
having a whole bunch of reenactors, a whole bunch of historical vendors. We open parts of the house up as kind of like a self-guided tour. So that's more mainly on the history side, but you guys, it's a free event. If anyone's in the area, show up. It's from
Mhm.
11 to 3. Come see some history, come see some reenactors, learn about the place. And then May 11th, we're having our big paranormal expo. Um, you can find information on that at our website and White Hill Mansion Paracon 2024.com. Just
Okay.
Google it, you'll find it. A lot of great celebrities, a lot of great vendors. It's just a great fundraiser too because pretty much everything goes right back to the house. So
Yeah, you guys are all unpaid volunteers working just to save the building,
yes, we're doing
and that's
everything we
awesome.
can. Yep.
All right. Well, Kyle Mangus, we're going to do all we can to advertise for you, but I wish you all the luck. I know it's a nightmare, but it sounds like you've got it pretty much under control. It's just slow.
Yeah, it's just slow going. I mean,
All
we're
right.
we're dedicated. Thank God for our volunteers and our board, and thank
Yeah.
God for the paranormal community because without it, it's hard to get your name out just for the history anymore. So it's a great thing preserving history through the
Mhm.
paranormal.
Well, thanks for coming on and thanks for sharing your story because it is amazing.
Awesome. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thanks, Kyle. Take care. Good luck.
Thank you.
The paranormal community is amazing that way. A lot of us do charity work. I've done a lot. I've done uh, work for an animal shelter in Kansas, Ferals in Peril for uh, rescuing stray cats in Herman, Missouri, and other places. We all have our choices. I know some do like abused children homes and projects, trying to save them, trying to help. So this is another one that's a couple of ghost hunting groups apparently have chosen this as their pet project, and that's pretty cool. Folks, I do want to one more real briefly bring up our UNX Network membership. It's free. Go to unxnetwork.com, drop down on the front page a little bit. There's a thing there to put your email address in. And for all that work, it takes 12 seconds. you get access to the free blog, and the blog has been burning up lately, guys. We have cube-shaped UFOs. We've had Mothman sightings, cryptid sightings. We got some ghost stories on there. Whatever pops up in the news, UFOs especially. The Tic Tac thing was really heavily covered. We've also got the newsletter and the Unx magazine. And the Unx magazine, that's kind of the neat one that we need to talk about because it's got some of the best writers in the system. And each time, if you're a member, you get a digital copy emailed to you every month. So this one here has stories on the haunted battleship North Carolina. Also had some stories on legends of Halloween. And if you guys are as old as me, you remember when they used to say every Halloween that a cult was looking for blonde-haired, blue-eyed children to sacrifice to Satan, or all the candy had razor blades stuck in it, or the apples had it in it. The candy was poison. There was some backing to that. Some things did happen, but the article exposed how it was one time or two times in this place, and it blew up out of proportion after that. But anyway, we've got special issues on time travel, UFOs, cryptids, elementals. Just recently did a two-parter on vampires in America. A lot of good writing, great people, and it's all free. It comes to your email. What are you waiting for? You put your name down. It's all free. Also, of course, we have the XCon. Last year's XCon was incredible. We had folks talking about government conspiracies, UFOs, cryptids, Mothman in Missouri specifically. I talked about ghosts because that's my bailiwick, but there was also 2 or 3 UFO people there. All kinds of information, and you get invited to come on in, watch it with us. We had a nice group of people last time, not only speakers, but an audience. And I think this year's going to be even better. So what are you waiting for? You need to join up. We've also got the Unx Network and all the shows, new people all the time. What are you waiting for? But me, what am I waiting for? It's about time for the St. Patrick's party. As you can see, Skelly back there is all decked out for it. And I guess I need to go. So I hope you all can stay dry. We're going into the rainy season. Stay warm, stay safe, and I guess most of all, stay spooked. Good night.